my Lightroom catalog real quick and see if I have an image that I could show you guys the hue saturation trick on real quick. Something that would show it a little bit better. I'm trying to see what I've got in here, if there's anything that has a horrid yellow color cast on it or not. Possibly this one? No, that one's not real good. Hold on. Oh, not even that one. I'm sitting here trying to think. You guys can refer to the video too, but I have no problem showing it again. I'm just trying to find a good image that really has a bad green color cast. Let me go back into my regular library and see if I have something else up here that might show it. I'm trying to think. What? No, it's not going to be any of these. No, none of those either. Okay, hold on. You know what? I might actually... Oh, 10-minute break? Yeah, that's fine. We'll be back in 10 minutes. I'll try and find an image real quick that I can show that on while you guys are taking a break. So we'll be back in 10 minutes, okay? Okay, is everybody back? I had to go feed my baby real quick. Okay, so I found a picture. Do not judge this picture, but there are, it's not edited, but it's like the perfect picture to show you guys 3 different things on, just in case like nothing gets chosen that will show you guys how to do this stuff. So the first thing I want to do is really quick, I'm just going to go over that hue saturation trick again because there is kind of a funky yellow color cast going on this guy's face over here. So I'm going to show you guys that again real quick. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a hue saturation layer. I'm going to select blues from the drop-down menu. I'm going to click on the left eyedropper. I'm going to click on an area where the skin is the most yellow or the most whatever funky color I can find going on. So like right over here. I'm going to click on the minus eyedropper, and I'm going to use that to click on a nearby area of skin that doesn't have the color cast, so possibly right down in this area here. And then I'm going to go to minus 10 saturation, plus 5 on my lightness, and about a minus 5 on my hue, again pushing it towards the magenta. So I'm going to go to my mask, I'm going to hit Control-I to invert it, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint that on to the side of the face where I'm having an issue. So this whole area right under here. And it's a subtle difference, but it does make a difference. You can see that yellow and you can see it go away. Can you guys see that when I click that on and off? Hopefully it makes sense. I've been using this trick forever, and it's something that I really do like. The other thing I wanted to show you, I have 2 other things I wanted to show you guys on this image. One of them was whitening teeth. So to go ahead and do that, I am going to make another hue saturation layer, and this is really simple. I'm going to select yellows from the drop-down menu. I'm going to go to about a minus 7 on my saturation and about a plus 35 on my lightness. And then I'm just going to hit Control-I to invert my mask, and I'm just going to paint that onto the teeth. There we go. Oops, it would probably help if that was turned up. We'll hit his teeth too, why not? There we go. Let me click that one on and off so you guys can see that. So before and after. So it's a quick way of whitening teeth without turning them gray. So the other thing I wanted to show you, because I have absolutely no clue if anybody's going to choose an image that will need any kind of help here, you know, like what I've like what I did on this picture. I'm going to show you guys how to liquefy real quick. So just in case we don't get an image that needs liquefy, which we very well may not, at least you guys will get to see that. So to do liquefy, you need it to be on its own layer. It has to be on a pixel layer. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-Alt-E to create a duplicate of my background layer, a stamp visible. And I'm going to go into liquefy. Whoops. So filter, liquefy. There are basically only two things. We're going to get rid of Dad's double chin. There are only 2 things that I use in liquefy. And the first thing being the freeze mask, which if you look at all your little tools, they're right up here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. The freeze mask is right here. I use this to freeze their facial features. Anything that's in a nearby area that I don't want to affect when I'm liquefying, I freeze it. And that will allow those pixels to not move when I'm messing with nearby areas. So I'm going to freeze the little boy's face also, since we're going to be working on Dad here. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the forward warp tool, which is the very top tool in your liquefy screen. Okay, sorry. Yes, I can show it again. Let me erase it real quick. Oh, now my screen's lagging. Hold on one second. Okay, the freeze tool, it's called the freeze mask. It's right over here. I'm just using the freeze mask to freeze areas of my picture that I don't want to affect when I'm actually doing the liquefy work or when I'm pushing stuff around, getting rid of fat, slimming people up. So basically what I would freeze somebody's facial features like their eyes, their nose, their mouth, because that's not something that I want to change at all right now. I'm also going to freeze the little boy's face because I'll be working on Dad's face right next door and I don't want to change his face at all in the process. So once I have those areas frozen, you can see that they have a red mask on them now. I'm going to click on the forward warp tool, which is the top tool in the liquefy screen. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making when they liquefy is that they try and do it with a tiny little brush. When you try and do it with a tiny brush, you're going to end up with like ripples. It's not going to be a smooth transition. It's not going to push things in smoothly. It's going to make it look bumpy. So you need a really big brush when you're liquefying. So big brush, we're going to push Dad in. We're just going to take some weight off of Dad right now. So I'm going to push his arms in just a little bit. I'm using a very, very large brush right now. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in on his face just a little bit more. I'm going to push the sides of his face in just a little bit, again, using a large, large brush. Just a tiny bit. A little bit goes a long way. So we're going to push the neck in. We're just going to take a little weight off. The next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this double chin. So just to give you guys the theory behind how I'm going to get rid of it, I'm going to take this second chin down here and I'm going to push it up behind his real chin. Okay? It's going to disappear behind the real chin. So let's zoom in on that area just a little bit more. And I'm going to take this forward warp tool, large brush, and I'm going to grab right here at the bottom of the second chin and I'm just going to push it upwards. And it's going to look really funny at first. Just bear with me for a minute. Large brush again. You cannot go wrong with a large brush here. Okay, once I have it up there like that, I know this looks ridiculous. It looks very ridiculous. Just bear with me. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do, since we did this on its own layer, I'm going to add a layer mask to this layer. Okay, if it would let me add a layer mask. There we go. I'm going to drop the opacity of the layer down to about 50%, and the reason I'm doing this is so that you can see the background layer behind it, so you can see both of them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in with a soft black brush, and I'm just going to mask right down to where his chin should be, his real chin. We're just going to mask that whole area right there. You guys can see where I'm painting. Let me go ahead and show you guys. I just hit the backslash key so you can see where I'm masking right now. Right down to where his real chin should be. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and pull the opacity back up. And I will show you guys real quick before and after. Before and after. So basically his double chin disappeared behind his real chin. It got shoved up behind it. It's the quickest way I know. I need it in real life too. I've had too many babies and I need to go on a diet and I just don't want to. This would be so much easier. I don't know why we can't do this in real life. But anyways, so that's a quick way to get rid of a double chin. So, and to get rid of yellow teeth and get rid of a yellow color cast. So did everybody get that? If so, I'm going to go ahead and X this out. Yeah, the freeze mask is awesome because when you're doing that, I don't want to be pushing his mouth up and his nose and changing the shape of his actual features. I'm just trying to get rid of the double chin because nobody wants a double chin in their pictures. So, on eyes, we can do eyes too, yeah. Hopefully somebody will select a close-up, and if not, I can always pull up a close-up. Just remind me. I have no brain cells left, so I'm really forgetful. So if we get to the end of the 5th image and we still haven't done the eyes, just let me know and I can pull up a close-up and show you guys how I do that. But let me go ahead and X this one out here and hop back over here to Lightroom. Oh, I got to get back to the right catalog here. Okay. Let me see who gets the next picture. Oh gosh, I am so going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry. Rocio? Rockio? I'm sorry. I know I just butchered that horribly. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce. But you get the next picture. I'm glad I was at least close. Number 22. I can't even see numbers on them anymore. My numbers have totally vanished. This one right here? Is that it? Oh, next one. Chicken Boy. Okay, yes, we can do Chicken Boy. That's one of my favorite pictures. Oh, here we go. Let's go back over here to develop. Okay. Okay, so let me go back to the way that this one looked on import. So that was this image on import. This is one of my favorite pictures of my little boy. He loves our chickens a lot. Oh no, is this the wrong one? No, I can go back and get the right one. It's not a big deal at all. Let me go back and grab the other one. Are you okay with this one? Okay. I don't have a problem with any of them, so. Okay, so this is what the image looked like on import. I can show you guys a little bit of eye work on this one. It's not a super close-up, but I can show you guys what I would do with the eyes on here. So anyways, the first thing that I would do is try and get my color corrected. Again, this is pretty typical of how I would start out the image. So I'm going to zoom in. I don't have anything that's really gray or white in this image, but I do have the whites of his eyes, and sometimes that will get you in the ballpark. Sometimes not. We'll just have to try it and find out. So I'm going to click with my white balance selector, and I'm going to click on the whites of his eyes right here. And I do not like what it has done here at all. I actually think the straight out of the camera looked a little bit better than that. So we're going to wing it this time. I want this image to be warmer, so I'm going to crank up the temperature quite a bit, 8,500-ish, just to warm it up. And again, it's to taste. And sometimes I just wanted to give you guys a tip. If you're changing, like drastically changing the color of your image, I don't know if you've ever forgotten. I shoot in Kelvin white balance, or at least I try to remember to change my Kelvin temperature, but sometimes I forget, and I'll come back with images straight out of the camera that are blue. If you're doing a really drastic color change on a picture, sometimes it's better to make that change, step away from the image for a few minutes, go get a snack, something, come and sit back down and look at it again and see if it looks right to your eyes. If you just sit there and you just see that drastic change happening, you're easily tricked into believing that it's wrong or that it's too warm. You kind of need to let your eyes settle on it a little bit. So just a tip, just a tip after you've made a drastic color change, walk away from it for 5 minutes and then come back to it. And it'll kind of allow your eyes to adjust and see if you're really seeing what you think you're seeing. So I'm actually going to go ahead and push the tint up a little bit more towards the magenta just because I want this to be more of a golden look, and it's going to give it more of a golden tone to the image. I do the same thing, Amanda. Sometimes I'll edit late at night and then I kick myself the next morning because I'll come back and I'll have green people or something horrible that I did while I was half asleep, and I'll have to go back in there and fix it. And I really get mad at myself when I've already posted it on my Facebook page and it has a bunch of comments on it, and the people that the picture is of have commented and I can't delete it and get rid of it and repost it. They need to like implement that the replace image feature like they have on Flickr. Darker skin color in terms of temperature, the same exact way as I would do with this one. Honestly, I try and keep my images. I'm more of a warm editor, so whether the person has dark skin tones or lighter skin tones, I tend to edit for warm skin tones, always, across the board. So, well, thank you. I've definitely posted some doozies on there, and there have been some that are so bad that I've actually gone in and deleted them after they had a lot of activity on it just because I couldn't take it being up anymore. So, exposure on this one, I'm actually going to go ahead and drop my exposure a little bit, just a tiny bit. Reason being, I just kind of wanted this to be a darker, kind of more subdued image. So again, it comes back to having that image in your head of what you want the picture to look like when you're finished. Yep, yes, this is my favorite f2, my 200L again. That lens hardly leaves my camera. If I've got the space to use it, I use it. I love it. I truly do think it's one of Canon's best portrait lenses. So I'm going to come down here to my shadows. I'm going to make my shadows a little bit darker on this one. So I'm just going to kind of pull that down, maybe about a -14, -15. The 135 is a great lens too. I've never used it personally, but I've never once heard a bad thing about it. I like being further away. It all comes down to like your shooting style. I am not the kind of photographer. I just don't like to be right up in people's faces. I like to be back further and kind of just away and just let things unfold naturally, and that's just my shooting style. I know some people like to be up closer and more personal, and that's just not me. Every once in a while I will use my 85 if the distance is just too much. The 85 is kind of like a medium for me. That's like about as wide as I'll get. I do have the 16 to 35 also, and I hardly ever use it. So, vibrance, there's not really a lot of vibrant colors in this image, but I'll still add my 15 to the vibrance. There's a lot of different things that play into the bokeh of an image, and it's going to depend on your aperture. It's going to depend on how far you are from your subject. It's going to depend on greatly how far your subject is from whatever's in the background. The further they are away from it, the nicer, smoother your background's going to be. So it's not just the lens that play into it. That was, yes, my baby holding the leaf was also the 200L. And there was a huge amount of distance between him and the background. I was actually standing in almost like a dry riverbed or a dry wash with a tunnel of trees over it, and so the actual whatever was behind him was way, way, way far away, which is why it kind of melted into nothingness in that picture. Yes, the foreground is blurred because I shot it from a low angle, so I was down on the ground shooting that picture. So the ground that was right next to me that was in the photo was blurred just because it was out of the focal plane. I shoot low a lot of times, especially with kids. So, oops, I did not want to do that. There we go. Next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add my noise reduction. So this one hardly has any noise at all. I might only add about a 10 to this one. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my adjustment brushes, and I am going to make an adjustment brush. I'm going to go with about a -0.6 on my exposure this time and maybe a 15 on my saturation. And I'm also going to lift my shadows just for a softer background. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush, slap this onto the whole entire picture. I might even add a little bit more magenta to the background and a little more warmth also. Just a little, not quite that much. Okay, it's like jumping around for me too. Let's go with a 10 here and a 10 here. There we go. That looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Erase. And I'm going to use a big brush and just erase on and around him. And then I'm going to click out of the adjustment brush panel. The upward angle adds weight to women. I don't shoot women from a low angle. That's definitely, unless you've got a rail thin woman, it's not usually a flattering angle for most women. I definitely want to be on the same level as them or even up above them slightly, looking down at them a little bit. But with kids, you can get away with the low angle. It's okay. Just women you got to be careful with. You got to be careful with how you pose them, how you light them, what angle you're shooting from, just everything, because the last thing any woman wants is to look. And they always say that the camera adds 15 pounds, and it's true, it really does, and you don't want any of your female clients feeling like they look chubby in your pictures because they won't buy them. So I do offer workshops on shooting. I don't offer them very often. Right now I'm at about 2 per year. I've got one coming up in in Raleigh in November, but it's already sold out. So I will probably do one next spring also. Location is to be announced. I don't know where I'm going to go yet. So, and I did one in Tennessee this last spring, or in May. So at this point, I would go ahead and take this image into Photoshop. This is my import. This is the straight out of the camera. And this is what we're going into Photoshop with. Yeah, big difference on the color. Again, a lot of editing. I mean, I can't stress enough how editing comes down to being able to have a vision to see the finished product. When you look at that straight out of the camera picture, can you picture in your mind what you want it to look like when you're done? I mean, if you can't, you're just going to be kind of muddling along aimlessly. You need to know what you want it to look like when it's done. I mean, because a lot of times the straight out of the camera picture is not all that inspiring. Raw images are kind of flat and blah looking and kind of lifeless, and you really need to be able to not only see the potential in it, but to know what you want the finished product to look like. And then once you have the tools to do that, you can just kind of do like what I do. I just pick around. I'm like, okay, this needs work. This part needs work. I want to highlight the hair. I want to pop the eyes. I want to make this color look more like this color. And once you know how to do those things, you can create anything. What was my mode? I shoot in neutral, camera neutral. Is that what you're asking? Okay. I always use camera neutral because I've never really messed with any of the other modes. I've always used it, and it tends to produce the least biased one way or the other pictures. They come out looking pretty neutral, camera neutral. They come out looking like a blank slate that I can work on without a lot of unwanted changes added into them. So that's why I do that. Okay, so let me go ahead. What did I just do there? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with these purple circles under, well, you can't even see it on this eye, but on this eye, we're going to get rid of this purple circle under his eye using the curves trick again. So I'm going to create a curves layer. I'm going to come over here to layers, make sure I'm clicked on the layer and not the mask. I'm going to double click on this eyedropper here, the top eyedropper, and I'm going to click on an area of skin, a nearby area of skin that has the correct color. So like right over here looks good. I'm going to hit OK. When this box pops up, I'm going to click No, and then I'm going to click on the purple color underneath his eye. Okay, and that's going to basically neutralize it. It's going to turn this color into what this color was. So I'm going to hit Control-I to invert my layer mask. I'm going to get my white brush, a soft white brush set to about 15% opacity, and I'm just going to brush that on to this area under his eye until it doesn't have to be exactly the same color as the other, but just until it's neutralized enough that I'm happy with the result. And if that's too strong, you can always drop the opacity. I don't know what yes does because I've never clicked on yes. I don't know. You'll have to try it and let me know. I'm going to drop the opacity of this layer down to about 50 or 60%, so it's not quite as strong. Right about there looks pretty good to me. Let me just check his face, see if he has anything else that needs to be patched away. I'm going to go back to the background layer and just patch away some of these little red blotches, but kids generally have pretty good skin. They don't need a whole lot of work on their skin. So, okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken my background a little bit. For this one, because it's going to be a pretty easy selection, I am going to go ahead and make a selection of him just to separate him from the background real quick. So again, I'm going into that quick selection tool that we used on the first picture, and I'm just going to go around and grab a quick selection of my little subject here. And this one should be relatively easy to do. Okay, once I've got that, I'm just going to go into Refine Edge, which is right up here at the top of the screen. It's going to bring up my Refine Edge box. I'm going to click on Smart Radius. I'm going to increase my radius to about a 4 or a 5 on this one. And then I'm going to click on the Refine Radius tool. And I'm going to brush around the edges of the chicken, around the edges of his hair, and around these grasses down here at the bottom also. So let me get a little bit larger brush. And you know, I think this is good news. It's telling me that I have 16 hours of recording left, so I am pretty sure that this entire webinar is being recorded. And now I just need to figure out how to upload it. So I will try and work on that within the next day or so and get that uploaded for you guys. So again, I'm just using this refine radius tool and just kind of going around the edge of the image here. And then I'm going to go around the edge of the chicken feathers, the chicken's behind, and then down here by the grass. We're going to go ahead and just brush over that also. And right around, we'll go around the edge of the chicken too, just to make sure we've got a good selection here. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. How much do I back it off? I'm not sure I understand your question. If I select more than, I don't worry about that. It's pretty good, that refine radius tool. The whole point of that tool is that it goes and it selects the outside edges. If you do oversweep something too much, let me go back into refine radius and show you something. If you do go over something a little bit too much, if you right click on the refine radius tool, you can click on erase refined tool and you can go in there and erase that area that you went over too much, and it brushes on just the same way. So so I'm going to save this selection. I actually would rather select my background than him, so I'm going to go to select inverse right now, and then I'm just going to save that selection to a levels layer. So all I have to do is create a levels layer, and you can see if I hit Alt and click on that mask, you can see that the selection that I just created. And it's using that refine edge tool makes a very detailed selection, and with something like this it really doesn't take very long to do it either. So the first thing that I think I want to do is add a little bit more contrast to the image. So I'm going to hit the D key, which is going to make black my foreground color and white my background color. And I'm going to create a gradient map layer, which turns it black and white, which I don't want. But I'm going to go ahead and change the blending mode of that layer. I'm going to change it to overlay. Obviously, this looks absolutely terrible, but what it's doing, it desaturates a little bit and it adds a lot of contrast. When I use this tool, I generally keep the opacity of this layer down at like 6 or 7%. And let me click that on and off so you guys can see that. It's just adding a slight bit more of contrast to the image. And it's a really good trick. And I hear a child trying to bust into my room, which means my husband is not watching them. Oh, it's my 2-year-old. Ironically, it's the 2-year-old we're editing a picture of right now who's found me. Hopefully he will not come in here. Can you guys hold on for 1 second? I'm going to go run him back to Dad. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, that was Chicken Boy himself busting in here. He must have known that I was editing his picture. Okay, gradient map. Yes, I can definitely repeat that. Let me do that again. I'm going to hit D, and D just makes over here, if you look at your colors, it'll make your foreground color black and your background color white, which is what you want. And then you just go down here to the layers palette and you pick gradient map, which is right down here, the second one from the bottom. So I'm going to click on gradient map, and then I'm going to change the blending mode of this layer to overlay. Just to show you guys a little bit about blending modes, this first box right up here with darken, multiply, etc., these are all blending modes that darken. Your next box are all lightening blending modes. They brighten an image. And the next box down here is contrast adding. So you've got your overlay, your soft light, etc. These ones down here are crazy and I never use them. I do not know what they do. I don't use them, so I can't instruct on them. But for this particular trick, I changed my blending mode to overlay, and then I drop my opacity down anywhere between like 5 and 7%. And it just adds, I'm going to go with 6%. It adds just a tiny bit more contrast to the image. You can kind of see what that's doing there. The next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I think I'm going to darken my background and make it a little bit more dramatic. So I'm going to Control and click on this mask that we created here. I'm going to go ahead and make a levels layer. I'm going to drop my midtones. Oh, let's see here. Let's try like a 0.8. Not quite that much. 0.88. We don't want to make it look like he's pasted on from another image, so you have to be kind of careful with this. I'm going to add a little bit to my output in RGB, maybe just like a 5, just to kind of smooth things out. And then I'm going to go to my reds, and I'm going to add a little bit to my output levels also, maybe a 3. And I'm going to go to my blue, and I'm going to add maybe a 7 to my output. It's, again, just going to, maybe not quite that much, let's go with a 5. It's just going to kind of give that background a kind of a darker, golden look to it. You can kind of see what that's doing when I click that on and off. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of soft light. So I'm going to go ahead and create a curves layer. I'm actually not going to use this mask again for this one because the only thing I want to mask out is the skin. So I'm going to make a curves layer. I'm going to change the blending mode to soft light, which again is going to be a contrast adding blending mode. Whoops, not overlay, soft light. There we go. Kind of does the same thing. Overlay just hits with a harder hammer, if that makes sense. I'm going to change the opacity down to about 25, maybe 30%. I'm going to leave it on his hair. I'm going to leave it on the chicken. I'm going to leave it on his clothing, but I am going to go in and mask this. Whoops. Okay. Whatever, Photoshop. I'm going to go in there with a black brush, and I'm going to mask this off of his skin. This does not have to be perfect again. So I'm going to go in here wherever you can see skin, and I'll just put on this. Whoops, I'm masking with a 50% brush. 100% would be helpful. And you can see that this masking job is not perfect. It really doesn't need to be. I'm just getting it off of his skin the best that I can. There we go. Next thing I'm going to do, and I just noticed this is me being OCD again. Do you guys see his blue shoulder over here? You guys see that hideous, awful skin tone over here that looks bright blue? We are going to fix that because I don't like that at all. So again, this is a job for the curves trick. Create a curves layer, click on the layer itself and not the mask. Go back to properties, double click on the top eyedropper. Now I need to find something that's relatively highlighted because this is kind of a highlighted area. It's not going to be dark like his forehead. So possibly his hand. I'm trying to see if the hand looks pretty good. Oh, let's see here. Right about here looks pretty decent. I'll click on his finger right here. And I'm going to click OK. Save the target colors as default, no. And then we're going to click on that shoulder right there. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control I, and again with a 15% opacity brush, I'm just going to brush that on to that little shouldered area to warm it up. Another way to fix an area like this would just to do a color balance layer. You could do color balance and just add reds and yellows into that, and then just paint it on that area, but this works just as good for me. And that looks pretty good. It's not blue anymore. Blue, warmer, not perfect, but it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb to me anymore, so I'm happy with that. The next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is add even a little bit more blue into my shadows. So I'm going to create a curves layer. I'm going to select blue from my drop-down menu right here. I'm going to pull that up down in the bottom left-hand corner so it's just my shadows a little bit. Right about here, about 1.5 boxes in, I'm going to pull it back down and just kind of give it that hazy, kind of warm, glowy, warm look. The last thing that I'm going to do to this picture is I'm going to just highlight, we'll do his eyes a little bit, and I'm also going to add just subtle highlights to his skin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll do the highlights on his face first. So to do that, I'm going to use a levels layer. I'm going to go ahead and increase my midtones to about a 1.05. My highlights are going to go to about a 245 on this one, and my blacks to about a 2. And I'm going to change my my blending mode to overlay, or to luminosity, I'm sorry. Luminosity, so I'm not pushing those reds. I'm going to hit Control I to invert, and I'm just going to use a soft white brush and kind of paint that onto the areas of skin that would normally be highlighted. So the forehead, whoops, the forehead, kind of the tops of the cheeks right here, and then right down the center of the face. If you wanted to make the lighting look even more dramatic, and this is something I will do in certain images, I'll do a second levels layer to darken my shadows a little bit. And the way that I do that, so I just create another levels layer. This one's going to be doing the exact opposite of what I just did. So I'm going to drop my midtones down to about a 0.9, and I'm going to increase my darks to a 2. Not going to mess with my highlights at all. I'm just going to increase or change my blending mode again to luminosity since I'm dealing with skin. I'm going to hit Control I to invert my layer mask, and I'm going to go ahead and contour his face a little bit. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. I'm just going to brush this on with the white brush onto the areas of the skin that would normally be shadowed. So kind of along the sides, under the cheekbones a little bit, the jawline right through here. And it's just, even sometimes I'll go under the nose. I'm not going to this time, but it just adds a little bit more drama and contrast to the skin, makes the edges of that face stand out a little bit more. You can really sculpt a person's cheekbones this way. It's a great little trick, and I use it a lot. So let's see here, the eyes. The last thing I was going to do to this one was the eyes and then a vignette. So eyes, I know this probably isn't the best image to show it on because there's only one eye here, but we can do one eye. The way that I deal with my eyes, I have a couple different things that I like to do. I will dodge and burn, but I do not use the dodge and burn tools in Photoshop. The way that I dodge and burn is I create a blank layer. So right down here at the bottom, create a new layer. I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay. I'm going to hit D to select black as my foreground color and white as my background color. And then I'm going to dodge with the white brush, and I'm going to burn with the black brush. You need to drop the opacity of your brush down to about 5%. So I'm going to zoom in. I've got my brush at 5%. Now I'm using the black brush first, and I'm going to go around just the edges of his iris right here and the eyelashes. It doesn't look like I'm doing anything, but when I click this layer on and off, you guys will see what I'm doing. I'm going to hit the eyelashes. Sometimes I'll even hit the eyebrows a little bit. And then I'm going to use the white brush, and I'm going to go around the colored part of the iris. I'm just going to hit it a few times, and then I'm going to hit this catch light to brighten it a little bit. I might even go back with my black brush and hit the pupil too, just to darken that pupil a little bit. Okay, it doesn't look like I did anything, but let me click that on and off, and you guys can see the difference there. It's a pretty big difference. In fact, it might even be too big of a difference for some. Really, you can always drop the opacity of the layer if it's too crazy for your taste. I'll drop it down to about a 50%. The next thing that I'm going to do to the eyes is I'm just going to add a little bit of saturation. Easy to do. A hue saturation layer, about 25 on the saturation. Hit Control-I to invert your layer mask, and then just paint that right onto the iris only. And that might be, again, that might be a little bit too much, so you can always drop the opacity of that layer down. I'll go with 50%. And that's pretty much what I do with my eyes. That's how I play up my eyes. This would be more dramatic in a close-up image, but at least you get to see the tools and how I would do it. So the last thing that I would do is add a vignette to this picture. So I'm going to go ahead and create a levels layer. It's going to be the same as I've done on the last couple of images. I just don't like the dodge and burn tools. They're destructive editing methods. By using a blank layer and just using the black and white brushes, it's something I can always go back and get rid of. If I don't like it, I can change the opacity of it. I can do it on a blank layer, which doesn't take up a lot of memory with saving. It's just kind of the method that I prefer to use. So I'm going to go in here now. I'm on a levels layer. I'm going to drop my midtones down to a point. I'm going to go with a 0.68 this time. I'm going to go to about a 13 on my output levels for RGB. Under reds, I'm going to go to about a 2 in the output. And under blues, I'm going to go to about a 6 under the output. And I'm just going to take a soft black brush, and a large soft black brush, and I'm just going to mask this off and around him. So it's only affecting the outside edges of the image. And obviously this hasn't been cropped. The composition's not all that great right now, but you guys, I would crop that at the very end after saving my layered copy of the image. So let me go ahead and revert this one for you. So there's the before. That's the straight out of Lightroom. And here is the finished Photoshop edit. So before and after. If I wasn't doing training and explaining in detail every step, this would probably, my average image probably takes me 5 to 10 minutes, I would say. Okay, hold on. And I know I missed a question. Just a minute. Just to add a little bit of color toning to the background, Rob, that's all it's doing. By adding a little bit of red and blue to my output levels, it's just tweaking the color just a little bit more. It's adding kind of a soft golden haze to the background. That's all that's doing. It's just for color toning. Yes. For sharpening for print, I would, after I've saved my layered copy, I would flatten it, crop it how I wanted to, and then I use an unsharpened mask with the values of 85, 1, and 4. I'm not a real heavy sharpener. I do, yes. I do add blue in the shadows of most of my images, and I do it very subtly. It's not like you're going to see like this garish blue staring back at you in the picture. So I do it very, very gently. So again, so there's the before, whoops, the before and the after of this one. Does anybody else have any questions about this specific image? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and X this one out. And we'll move on to image number 4. Thank you. Out of my 10 children, only 2 of them have curly hair, and most of my boys have like little military style buzz cuts. It's real short. I keep it really short, but I have not yet cut his hair. His hair is getting really long, and my big kids get on my case about it and tell me I need to cut it off, and they say it's disgusting, and he gets food in it all the time, which is totally true, but I'm just resisting the urge to cut it off. The other day I was in there like trying to deal with his hair, and I found like a clump of old macaroni and cheese in the back of his curls. I'm like, they have a point. It is gross. Like, he had like old dried up macaroni and cheese stuck in his hair. I don't know how long it had been there or like how it got in there, but anyways, I still like his curls. If he'll let me, sometimes I'll like pull it back, and I pull it back and I'll put it like in a little ponytail when he's eating. Oh gosh, the sky. That's another time-consuming one, but I can briefly show you guys how I do that. Do you want me to do that real quick before we move on to image number? I'm just going to show you how I drop in a sky real quick, okay? All right, let me go grab a different image or one that would be suitable for doing that on. I don't think I have one in here. Just a minute.